Hello everyone, and welcome to my fundraising concert for HaNC, the Head and Neck Cancer Support and Research Charity of the University Hospital of Aintree. I should start by explaining what am I doing and why am I doing it. And I'll begin 6 months ago when I had to have some radical surgery to remove a malignant tumour from my jawbone. And at that time, the surgeon said to me, "Don't worry, we won't leave you without a jawbone. We'll take the fibula from your left leg and make a new jawbone and screw your face back together with a titanium plate." And I thought, really? Don't I need the fibula? She said, no. Okay, so I thought in my recovery, a meaningful challenge would be to retrain my left leg to be able to play the organ again. And I thought, if I can play the organ well enough, then maybe I can put that to good use and raise some funds for HaNC. I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's donated so far through my JustGiving page. If you haven't had the opportunity to donate to HaNC, then there's a link in the description below the video. Before we start the concert, a few words about the instrument. I'm going to play a virtual pipe organ which uses a computer to replicate the sound of an original pipe organ that's been digitally sampled by a sound engineer. The virtual organ can be played in exactly the same way as the original aeroacoustic instrument, where the organist can combine various stops to produce an almost infinite variety of sound textures, ranging in pitch and volume from the barely audible to the thunderous shaking of the building. You just need some nice big speakers to be able to feel the pressure of the sound during the loud bits. In this concert, I'm actually going to play two different organs. One is the Henry Willis organ of Hereford Cathedral, installed in 1892 and since rebuilt several times. With 66 ranks of pipes, many enclosed in swell boxes, 35 couplers and a whole battery of combination pistons, I can select just what I need to play 4 out of 5 pieces in the programme. Those 4 works were all composed since the Hereford organ was built and will demonstrate the full range of dynamics of the instrument. The 5th piece, or pair of pieces, is J.S. Bach's Prelude and Fugue in C major, BWV 545, which just demands the sound of a Baroque organ. For that, I will play the Andreas Silbermann organ of Arlesheim Cathedral near Basel in Switzerland. The instrument is a fascinating fusion of French and German styles. It was built in 1761, that's shortly after Bach's lifetime, in conjunction with a rebuilding of the cathedral itself, which was altered to enhance the acoustics of the instrument. How cool is that? With a more modest 36 ranks of pipes, all of which are unenclosed, no way to adjust the loudness, and only 2 couplers, it has lots of power and character. The Arlesheim organ is fantastically bright and spiky, thanks in part to its array of mutation stops, which, when used, effectively produce a chord with the press of each key. It also has the rudest 16-foot pedal reed I've ever heard. Nice. Listen out for that towards the end of the fugue. But first, to Hereford. The first piece I'm going to play is by Herbert Howells. It's one of his psalm preludes. He wrote this one when he was in his early 20s and was diagnosed with something called Graves' disease, which was a life-threatening autoimmune condition. And he was given 6 months to live, which is something I can empathise with. The piece really represents his mood at the time, I feel. It starts with a very pained, hushed opening and develops in typical Howells fashion to much broader centre section using the full resources of the organ, and then tails off into a hushed, peaceful ending. I hope you enjoy it. The next piece I'm going to play is the Bach Prelude and Fugue in C major, BWV 545, for people who like catalogue numbers. I like these two pieces because the prelude is very demanding. It spans the full range of the organ, and it's very challenging to play, but very, very exciting. And the fugue, by contrast, starts in a very stately manner, but quickly develops into a really interesting, complex structure. It's got lots of surprises in it. The theme appears 16 times throughout the fugue, so see if you can spot the entries. Some of them are obvious and some of them are quite hard, but I hope you'll enjoy it. The next two short pieces are written by William Walton, who composed them as part of a film score for Henry V. The first one is a Passacaglia, where there's actually a Waltonian joke hidden in the music. It really describes the death and funeral of Sir John Falstaff, who was Henry V's drinking partner, and the ground base of the Passacaglia falls down, representing Falstaff's descent into the grave, whilst the melody above rising represents the passage of his soul to heaven. The last few bars are really quite funny, because you can almost hear the funereal drum as the body is lowered into the grave. Even though the organ has no actual drum, the orchestration is quite clever at reproducing that sound. The second Walton piece is another string orchestra reduction, and describes the parting of two lovers at the end of a love scene in the film. So it's very delicate and beautiful. So Joseph Rheinberger, a native of Liechtenstein, spent his working life in the Munich area of Germany, and he was perhaps a late romantic composer, wrote lots of music, but had formidable output of organ music, second only to J.S. Bach. This piece I would like to play is the prelude to his Sonata No. 1 in C minor. It's been described as quite antiquated in style, very like almost pastiche romantic composition, and it's very pianistic in its composition, and it's quite fascinating how Rheinberger managed to create the kind of a percussive effect you can get from a piano on the organ, which is not percussive at all, and he does that with some really interesting staccato and breaks of pedal and manual parts, leaving space for the tune to come out. Some really interesting bumps and thumps from an organ that has no percussion whatsoever. The last piece I'd like to play is written by Paul Edwards. That's Paul Edwards, the composer, rather than Paul Edwards, the footballer, philosopher or engineer. Paul Edwards described this piece as an improvisation on the theme of a hymn tune written by Frederick Arthur Gore Ouseley. The hymn tune's called Contemplation. I'll play the hymn tune first and then I'll play Paul Edwards' improvisation. The improvisation is really interesting. It doesn't adhere slavishly to the hymn tune, but uses fragments of it and reproduces those with increasingly interesting jazz harmonies, and the harmonization is reminiscent of the 20th century American composers Harry Warren and Dave Brubeck, I think. It's really lovely, crunchy and again something that uses the dynamic range of the organ but ends extremely quietly, and it's really good fun.